When I was 23, my boyfriend and I broke up, so I was in the process of moving away from my hometown to Houston. I just wanted to start over somewhere new. It was about 3 a.m., and I was driving through a small town in Texas on my way to Houston when I decided to stop for gas. It was pretty empty, but the gas station was open. As I was filling up, looking at my phone, I saw a truck pull up to the pump on the other side of me. I wasn't paying any attention until I put my phone in my pocket to put the nozzle back, and I saw a man just staring at me. I smiled at him, turning to put the gas cap back on, when I saw 4 more men, 2 on either side. I thought that was weird, but I just wanted to get in my car and go. As I went to pull the handle on my door, they attacked me. I was screaming and kicking and fighting as hard as I could, but I wasn't strong enough. 2 of them pulled me into the back seat of the truck while 2 of them pushed me in. I ended up draped over their laps. I was still trying to get free, but it was hard to move with their weight holding me down. I started to cry. I have never felt so weak in my life. I started scratching one man thinking, if they kill me, his DNA will be under my nails. They pulled up to a motel and carried me inside of a room. I was screaming again, and the oldest looking one started hitting me, telling me to be quiet. One of them said if I was good, they wouldn't hurt me. They held me down on one of the beds and tied my hands and feet together with a belt and some kind of thin string like a shoelace. I was panicking and still crying, just telling them to let me go. I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't tell anyone, that's what I told them. They started talking to each other in another language, one I couldn't recognize. Looking around the room, I saw bags and beer cans, lots of beer cans. It smelled like they had all been staying in this one room with 2 beds for a while. I don't really want to get into what they did to me, but at some point, one of the men said they needed more beer. They decided the smallest one was going to stay in the room with me. So after the other 4 left, it was just me and the man who looked to be around my age. I remember thinking, I could probably beat him up if I get loose. I asked him if I could use the bathroom, and when he untied me, I bolted for the door. I swung the door open, and he grabbed my arm. I yelled, "Get off me," and he let go, eyes wide. I ran down the street, no clothes on, and jumped in front of the first car I saw. It was a confused elderly man. He rolled down his window and yelled, "What are you doing?" Like I was ruining his morning or something. I told him I needed help and that I was kidnapped. He drove me to the police station where I was given scrubs and could file a report. They ended up saying I needed to go to the hospital for an examination so they could record any evidence that the man may have left on me. I just wanted to shower and go home, honestly. I just wanted to talk to my mom. They found the men the same day. It turns out they were all brothers. They didn't say what they planned on doing with me after, or why they did it in the first place. They claimed to be all blackout drunk at the time. I ended up moving to the other side of the country, and even though I know they're still in prison, I get nightmares about what happened.
I was driving for Costco a few years back. It was around this time of year. We usually took extra shipments to various locations due to the holiday season. We got a call that one of our locations in rural Kentucky needed a restock of giant spiders. They knew I was a fast driver, so I was given the last-minute late-night duty. I loaded up my truck and headed out on the 265. It was around 3 a.m. when I started to have this eerie feeling. I chalked it up to just being tired and popped a couple of NoDoz. About 15 minutes later, the road started to fog up. I mean, more so than any other time before or since. It got to the point where I had to pull off to the side and wait. There weren't any other cars on the road, so I figured I could wait until it cleared up a bit. About 5 minutes of still waiting in silence, my truck goes dead. No lights, no engine, nothing. I tried to crank it, but it was like the battery was dead. I try my CB, but cannot get anyone on. I check my cell phone, and there's no signal. As I'm sitting there contemplating my next move, I hear what sounds like a child crying. It slowly morphed into a woman crying, or at least, that's how it sounded to me. Now I'm a big man, 6'3", 250 pounds, but refuse to exit my cab. I did roll down my window and ask if anyone needed help. At that point, the crying stopped. Then I heard what sounded like a sinister laugh. At that point, I felt like the laughter was directed at me. I rolled up my window, and it seemed like the more scared I became, the louder the laugh went. Then as soon as it started, it stopped. And just like that, my truck started back up and the fog dissipated. I drove out of there like a bat out of hell. I get to the next truck stop and pull in. I run to the bathroom and pour water on my face and ask myself, did that really just happen? I go out to the diner and see this fellow with a John Deere hat, red flannel and blue jeans. I needed to know if anyone else had experienced it too. I go up to him and say, excuse me, are you a fellow trucker? Because I just had one hell of an experience. He says he's not, but says that that road is most certainly haunted. I know somewhere that I will not be driving again anytime soon.
It was April 1st, 2001. I was at home watching TV when I heard a big bang on my back door. I didn't know who or what it was. Thought it was a raccoon or something, so I kept watching TV. I will never forget what I heard. Someone whispered, "I am coming for you." I turned to see who it was, but no one was there. I went outside and yelled, "Who's there?" I went back inside, and then I saw it. It was a man with a white rabbit mask holding a kitchen knife. I ran to the kitchen and grabbed a knife and turned on the light. The guy took off his mask, and it was my friend, Fred. I was relieved, and he yelled, "April Fools!" I asked how he managed to get so far when he whispered in my ear. He looked confused. To my surprise, he said, "I never whispered in your ear." That's when I knew something was in my house. I told Fred to hide and call the cops. When the cops got there, they saw a man with long black hair robbing stuff from my house. He had a pistol and some pocket knives. The cops told me he had broke out of prison a couple days before the incident.
We'd been chatting for a few weeks and had even discovered we had a few mutual friends. I was pretty intoxicated one night and was feeling social, and decided to call an Uber to his place. Once I got there, we talked outside for a while and ended up vibing even better in person. I opened up to him about my health problems, and he opened up to me about his older sister who had passed away from a similar condition to mine. I was curious about his sister, but I definitely didn't want to pry. We walked into his house, and it smelt like 1,000 dead rats were rotting under the floorboard. I was still pretty drunk, so I tried to forgive it because, hey, sometimes animals die under a house or in the walls and there's nothing you can really do about it. I start to look around, and the whole house looks like a cluttered storage unit. He takes me to his room, which is seemingly normal, kind of feminine, but that's cool, and we hook up. I ended up falling asleep there and woke up at around 10 AM to the stench of death. I opened my eyes feeling very sober at this point and started to look around the room. I noticed that only girls' clothes were hung in the closet. I start to assume I've possibly been cheated with. Then I see a giant black binder on his nightstand. When he woke up, I decided to jokingly ask him, "What's in the giant binder?" Turns out it was every single episode of Golden Girls printed out. He said he read it at work and it's the only show he'll ever watch. Okay, I asked him what he did for work. something I definitely should have probably known by this point, and he dodged the question. I sat up and looked at the pillow I'd been cozily sleeping on. It had no pillowcase, and it was covered in what looked to be old blood. It looked like the blood had been coughed onto it. I started putting the unpleasant pieces together. I asked as sensitively as I could, "Hey, was this your sister's room?" I noticed the clothes in the very visible closet. He says, "Yeah, and this is her bed. I haven't changed or washed anything. It makes me feel better to be in her bed. This is where I held her when she died, and you remind me a lot of her. I really, really like you." And then he tried to hook up with me, like he didn't just drop some unsettling news. I felt immensely sorry for him, but decided I needed to get out of there. I made some excuse and left. I decided not to entirely ghost him because of how bad I felt for him. He was clearly dealing with some really dark shit. We kept in contact for a few weeks until I went on my Find My Friends app. I noticed that he'd clearly taken my phone while I was asleep that night and shared my location with himself. I called him and went off. This was not my first rodeo with the stalker type, and I was not dealing with it. He told me he couldn't believe I thought he would do something like that, and I'm being a really terrible person dumping him because his cat had recently died. I blocked him. After he said that about his cat, combined with his tendency to hold on to things, it really makes me wonder what that smell actually was.